And just like that, we are back. Happy Friday. We are here, AWS On Air, your weekly show to unpack everything going on by way of feature announcement, product launches from the very experts who built it. Hey, folks, my name is Robbie Belson. I'm a senior developer advocate, and I am delighted to have joined alongside me Jillian, who I wouldn't be here at AWS On Air if it wasn't for Jillian. So thanks so much for joining me as a co-host.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. I'm so glad that you're a co-host, and I'm so excited for everyone who's here with us. Please drop in the chat where you're joining us from. Post questions as we're talking here. That's why we do this as a live, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm coming in from New York City, so I want to see if there's any other New Yorkers tuning in here. And if you're asking yourself, well, is AWS On Air only a Friday show? This is our flagship show, but you can also check us out all week long. Tuesdays, you want to learn about startups with yours truly. You want to talk about security with Kyle, Under the Hood with AWS to dive deeper on specific products. We've got our sports show with Nick on Wednesdays, and the list goes on. So definitely feel free to check out our entire week of programming. We've got a pretty busy show here today, Jillian. You want to tell the audience a little bit more about what they can expect?
I know, we almost may as well call this like the AI show, because this episode, we're going to be talking about speech-enabled Gen AI applications. And we've got our friends from NVIDIA who are going to hang out with us. DGX Cloud, super excited. What about you?
I mean, I love our two announcements that we get to talk about today, but I love our folks from Repost Live. We're here as developers for developers. So it's really important to hear from you throughout the show, not just questions that you post in the chat, but also what you might be posting on AWS Repost, a great way to get community beyond. So we got a ton to cover here today, but without further ado, let's introduce our guest from the Novasonic team. Let's do it.
Veer, Arya, welcome to AWS On Air. So excited that you guys are both joining us, and really to kick off the conversation with all of us collectively here, whether it's Mohammed from Saudi Arabia, Kids Game from India. We want to talk about conversational AI. So maybe Arya, can you tell us what is conversational AI?
Hey folks, thanks for having us. Glad to be here, excited to be here and talk about some of the exciting announcements that we have, starting with Novasonic. Yeah, great question. Let's just start with a very simple definition. Conversational AI is all about enabling us and making it possible for us to talk with our machines and with our AI in the form of agents or other forms. And we want to have real conversations with machines using our own voice, right? And exactly how would you do with other humans? Instead of typing out the question and then waiting for the system to reason through it and respond back, and then you have to read that response in form of typed output, you really want to make this very natural and conversational, to be able to speak naturally and to hear your AI respond back naturally using speech. And this is really important because voice is one of the most intuitive ways for people to communicate with each other, right? So you don't need to learn a new API, new UI, new schema. And there are like cases that even it's not even possible for us, or is it not safe for us to type, right? If you're on the go, you're in the car, and you just, the most natural way to communicate and, talk with these machines is to use your own voice. So basically, that's a definition that I provide for conversational AI in a very simplistic way.
So let's bring it back to the launch here. We're here to talk about Novasonic. You've introduced this notion of conversational AI, the technology impact, the linguistic impact, but why now? What was the industry saying? What were customers saying? Take us behind the scenes of the origin story of building the service itself.
Yeah, great question. Before answering that question, let me just give a little bit of a precursor about the state of the union about conversational AI, which is absolutely very difficult and challenging to build. So if you look at 1,000 feet view of the current state of union, most of the systems today, they leverage what we call a pipeline approach or a cascaded approach, where your conversational AI journey in terms of the interaction with the AI consists and includes a few steps. It starts with transcribing what the user is saying. So when the user started speaking with this system, we first, in the current system, we transcribe them in form of text. The process that we call the speech recognition, or automatic speech recognition, or ASR for short. Then it goes the next step, which is after we understood, like transcribe what the user said, we want to understand them. What is their intent? What is the intent behind their query? The process that we call natural language processing. And natural language processing have to do dialogue management, because most of the conversations are multi-turn, and it's just not a single shot. And then finally, once the system does the intent understanding of the user input, they come back with a response, and we have to render that response back into a speech, a process that we call text to a speech. Now, this traditional system, or the current system, works very well, and there have been huge advancements using advanced deep learning techniques to advance and improve each of these components: speech recognition, TTS, and natural language processing. But the main problem with these conventional approaches is that these are usually like introduce errors, and there's some of the nuances in human speech is by definition lost. So once, like things like tone, pacing, emotion, when you go to a text representation from a speech, by definition those are lost in translation, right? And we know how important these are for not just carrying forward and understand what was said, but how what was said, the type of queries that our customer have. Also, putting aside this loss of information, there is another aspect, in terms of the developer experience. When you look at these systems, because there are different components involved in building the stack, developer experience, you usually have to integrate with different systems. You have to have, interact and learn and have expertise with different APIs. So also the developer experience, because of this cascaded approach, is not really ideal, if you will. So Novasonic is our latest, breakthrough in providing foundation models for conversational AI. And we have been hearing all these, sort of feedback about why these traditional systems are not natural, human-like, and there have some developer experience problem. And so we have been hard at work to provide, sort of a new foundation model in form of a speech-to-speech, where we want to be able to power the next generation of, voice forward applications. What really sets apart, Novasonic from some of these, current solutions out there is that it's try to really solve this conversational problem in an end-to-end fashion. So our design starts with a very unified architecture. Instead of stitching together different primitives and different components, that tries to do that, that to execute the conversational AI step by step. So like I said, instead of stitching together like system for recognition, understanding, and generating, Novasonic does this all on the backbone of a unified architecture and unified model. What that enables us to do is that we are able to maintain the full context, because it's a now unified model, both lexical context and also paralinguistic, so that we be able to maintain that context throughout this whole conversational AI system that we have. So now your output and the system can reason through that speech input. It can also understand what the tone, paralinguistic, and emotion on the input is, and it can adapt its responses to be more human-alike, more natural, and more contextualized.
So Arya, in the spirit of making it more human-like, let's contextualize this into some sort of practical example. What are some of those use cases, or just a very simple example to ground this in a conventional experience that an AWS developer might have?
Yeah, so like the simple example would be like if you're building a very voice forward, application with your, whatever use case that you have, like let's say customer service, right? So you want to build a customer service application. So now you're building the conversational AI system. Your customer is calling your backend, voice agent, and they're just giving you a query, and they might be very mad or sad in their query, right? And they say something about some product is not working. So you want to be able to have the reasoning intelligence of not just what the user said, but also how the user, what is the user tone and sentiment, so you can actually take the appropriate action in terms of the solving their problem, but also having an appropriate tone in your response in form of empathy that the system has to have if the user having a really difficult time, working with one of the products, as an example, in the context of customer service, right? So, but beyond this, this contextualization, the nuances about tone and naturalness, there's also an important phenomenon in the human conversation that we often interrupt each other, right? So our communication is really back and forth, and sometimes I chime in and I have new idea, I want to correct someone else's understanding, in the form of interruption handling, or what we technically refer and barging. So one of the core designs with the speech-to-speech and Novasonic is a mechanism or design that can actually help us to handle these interruptions, natural interruptions that happen as part of the voice queries, and having a mechanism for the system to respond to those gracefully in a speedy manner. So if you put it aside the performance and expressiveness, there is another important aspect, is that in the conversational AI, you have to make sure that your system is its terms of latency and speed is super fast. Human conversation is we are very fast in understanding the cues and being able to adapt and respond back.
Arya, in that spirit, in the same way that I intentionally cut you off, what I love about Novasonic is it can care for exactly that human interaction. The fact that I blatantly interrupted you, it can care for that linguistic understanding. It's pretty cool.
Exactly, and that's one of the important things that we heard from our customers, right? The terms are not rigid. The communication between the user and the system it's not supposed to be rigid. We really put design and mechanism in the system and the model such that if you just come and interject in the middle of system responding back, the system can understand very well and in a speedy manner adopt its follow up to that interruption that has happened, right? So bottom line is that we listen to our customers, we listen to some of the pain points that our developer had with our legacy conversational system, and we try to come up with a new design in Novasonic, end-to-end, speech-to-speech, to make it more human-like, natural, speedy and fast, and cost performant, but also at the same time making sure that the developer experience is more unified. They need to integrate with a unified API on the back end.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people like Raman666, Garlic GE are probably wondering, besides what use cases that you were just talking about, they're probably thinking about what are their own use cases. So if you're in the chat, love to hear what are your use cases? What are some of the things that you're thinking about of how you can incorporate conversational AI in your applications? And I also wanted to call out, there's some really great resources. So as people here are thinking about their use cases, they don't have to start necessarily from scratch. So I'd love to understand, and maybe you can share with all of our friends here, what are some resources that you recommend? So for the folks who are joining, they can get started really quickly.
So I can defer to my friend, Veer can respond to that question. So there is some, AWS blog posts and, developer experience. We have a technical paper also on some of the, performance aspect of the system. So happy to actually post this here. And in terms of what type of use cases that, our developers can use this system, this new foundation model, I defer to Veer to actually speak for that.
Sure. Thank you, Arya. Everyone, nice to meet you. Speaking about the use cases for conversational AI, I think there's a broad spectrum of use cases. There are enterprise use cases like the one that Arya was alluding to earlier for customer service call automation. Typically, you see customers having to wait in a long holding pattern or a waiting time to get a human customer service agent on the other end to solve their issues. Instead, what enterprises are now looking for is to remediate this problem by having an AI agent which can talk very naturally in spoken form and understand and be empathetic to the customers and their issue, be able to handle such calls. So a lot of the information gathering that needs to happen or basic problem solving that can be done, enterprises are looking for, say, a Novasonic powered customer service agent, which can address that issue in a very conversational manner. There are other use cases outside of the CS industry, I would say, which are about, for example, language learning or learning in general. We have customers who would like to have an AI agent which can speak in a particular language and train non-native speakers to pick up that language, let's say British English, for example. And the way the pronunciation goes, the way the enunciation goes, it can help you make that new language learning experience more conversational without just repeating a certain set of words. You can now have a back and forth chat, and it can give you feedback on how to improve that pronunciations. We have other use cases where customers would like to have some kind of an expert who can comment on maybe the game or a sports event that happened, the probability of a certain team or a player winning or scoring and coming out as an MVP in the coming tournament. So those kind of cases, the responses are grounded in the actual data of the game statistics, and therefore the expert can give you the odds of winning or the likelihood of a certain player scoring a certain goal or a point. And that's an expert conversational agent use case we have seen. And besides that, there's always a personal assistant. So we have worked very closely with our partners in Alexa, and personal assistant space is where the speech-to-speech conversational AI will really shine, where it can not just have a conversational experience, but it can personalize it based on your preferences, your likes and dislikes, and your preferred song names and shopping items in the cart, and so on and so forth.
And
so these are broad use cases.
Perfect. And in that spirit of personalization, tell us in the chat how you're planning to use Novasonic. We built an AWS on-air assistant that we used in the promo video for this episode to get folks familiar with the show itself. But you can always lean on Veer and Arya to learn more about Sonic. And on behalf of the AWS on-air family, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All righty. While our Novasonic folks jump off screen, we've got another segment here from our partners at NVIDIA. I'm super passionate about the work that NVIDIA and AWS get to do together, particularly as you think about breaking down those barriers and thinking about accelerating AI production with NVIDIA DGX Cloud on AWS. We're going to hear from the team that built that service, and let's welcome them onto the stream.
Charlie, Rahul, welcome to AWS On Air. So happy you both are here. We're talking about DGX Cloud. And for the friends who are with us in the audience, can you tell us what is DGX Cloud?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having us, Jillian and Robbie. So glad to be here. Before I dive into that, though, I just want why DGX Cloud? Let me just paint the picture of where we are in the market today, right? We've seen an evolution of AI from predictive AI to generative AI, which was all the talk last year, right? And this year, you're hearing a lot about agentic AI. And Rahul, if we could show up the one slide. There's these 3 scaling laws that we show on the slide. I'm not sure if you're seeing that. But this is, with these, agentic AI coming up with these 3 scaling laws where it's time scale, test time scaling. It's driving this need for long-term thinking. This was driven by DeepSeek and really the reasoning models that are out there. So as the AI gets more intelligent, there's more and more compute that's needed. And so taking that into mind, the complexity, the organizations are lacking the expertise and the resource that are needed to take a project from POC to production. So we've created what Rahul's showing here, a platform. It's actually a full platform everywhere from the infrastructure that developers need that we co-engineered with AWS. And then we added, job scheduling and GPU orchestration, as well as enterprise software. On top of that, our services and support as well, directly from NVIDIA. So there's really coming from NVIDIA, all the GPUs that you're using, software that you're using, you could get supported directly from NVIDIA and the expertise that we have here.
So as I look at that slide here, I want to talk a little bit about the DGX Cloud and AWS value proposition. And it's clear that today developers use NVIDIA services all the time, whether it's just deploying a P5 instance on Amazon EC2 for accelerated compute, or running a NVIDIA inference microservice in NIM on SageMaker. So they can do all these things in isolation, but it sounds like part of the value proposition is this end-to-end solution, and abstracting away the complexity of managing each of those sum of parts.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the big part is once developers come on, any organization, developers, enterprises, they come on, the first thing that they have to do is figure out how do I make this infrastructure ready and usable for my developers, right? You can't really do the work until you could come on to that and start using it, right? What we do with DGX Cloud is we do all that work. We do all that work so that developers, our customers, they don't have to do it. So once it's ready, you have your large scale, whether you're using like a handful of GPUs or you're using hundreds or even thousands of GPUs, all that's ready to go for you. The whole infrastructure setup, you bring your foundation model or all your data, you're ready to go on day one. And we're going to help you out with that.
So cool. So MacTac in the chat saw you at GTC, Charlie. So cool. And I bet MacTac's probably back because MacTac wants to see a demo.
Awesome. Yes. And that's why Ripple's here. I've done enough talking. I think you want to see what this is all about and the exciting thing that we built.
Thanks, Charlie, for handing me this over. And, thanks, Jillian and Robbie, for having us over, to talk about the DGX Cloud Run AI environment. So like you can see on my screen, this is like a broader overview of how the Run AI solution looks like when you want to run your workload and when you want to actually run your inferences using the Run AI solution. This slide basically just showcased the scheduling and GPU orchestration and the various capabilities that Run AI co-engineered with the AWS EKS managed Kubernetes environment provides the end users to run their inferences. So just directly moving on to our really good UI.
Nothing like a good UI to simplify the underlying operations of managing Kubernetes clusters.
Definitely, because we do support both the UI and CLI operations. So, the users are more than welcome to, go ahead and run the commands through the compute nodes from the Kubernetes clusters or through our UI. I'll be demoing you the UI today, which basically showcases right now the number of GPU nodes and, the ready GPU nodes. We can see the breakdown between the various GPU usage. As you scroll down, you can see the compute utilization based on each of your inferences that are running on. And basically, monitor your application or your environment based on that. We can see.
I just want to make sure we only see the diagram. I want to make sure our audience here can see the live Run AI environment that you were mentioning. And while we're pulling that up here, we want to hear in the chat, how are you using NVIDIA technology today? Are you using accelerated compute instances on EC2? Are you using NVIDIA inference microservices and NIMs? Or have you had a chance to use DGX in the past? We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, I hope I'm able to show the Run AI environment now.
There we go.
There we go.
Yeah. So my apologies. I'll be looking at my other screen as well. So, my apologies in advance if, you see me looking at, I'm not checking my emails. So basically, yeah, this particular UI showcases the ready GPU nodes, the various compute nodes. We can also see that our department and project are set up as the environment for AWS clusters here. This is basic analytics, that are visible for the Run AI users to make sure that their workloads are actually configured in a more meaningful way and the resources are utilized in a more meaningful way. Now, you can always manage the access and, the organizational view of your clusters. You can basically split your cluster into multiple departments so that the usage of your environment is more meaningful. You'll be able to visualize the GPU allocation ratio, and you'll be able to basically fractionalize your GPU usage based on the type of department that is using this. Now, again, the resources are the compute nodes and the node pools that are associated with various environments. We can see multiple EC2 instances accessing these workloads and accessing this particular underlying hardware. So depending on that, we'll have to create an environment. And this is the actual cool stuff where we, look at AI and where we actually, run the creative models that we have. You'll see a lot of predefined models that NVIDIA, NIMS, and NEMO provides, partnering with various, open source modules like Llama. You'll have to set up your credentials, based on your preferences to access the repositories or any of the NGC repositories that we empower. So you'll be able to access your NGC repository at predefined containers, use those containers to run your workload and inferences. Now let me quickly show you how we take care of the data part. So we use PVCs to create to basically store your data, and these are like high performance luster PVCs, sorry, where you define the scope of these PVCs into your cluster. You apply this, you just name it, XYZ. You basically give it a storage class. We use luster storage here. The access mode is read and write by many nodes because many of the users are going to be using your storage. And the volume mode is going to be file system in our case. Like I generally like to define my workspace as my container path, so that all my data is actually residing at the place where I want it to reside. And we can just go ahead and just create this run space. Once we have the data sources ready, we can see that we have multiple data sources ready. I'll be using the one that I already created. We can look at the compute nodes that we have set up for our Run AI environment. Basically, you can bifurcate your environment into multiple use cases where multiple teams and multiple projects can access these compute nodes. Based on the availability, you can run and assign workloads to these compute nodes.
So what if we bring this to a practical example, Rahul, in the context of I'm an enterprise organization, hundreds of data scientists, I need hundreds, if not thousands, of accelerated compute nodes. It sounds like DGX Cloud on AWS can sort of manage and aggregate that compute capacity, create an easy abstraction for organizations and teams to manage specific logical subsets of that compute, and then go about training and inference as they would using these sort of managed primitives.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what I'll showcase in the next, next part of my demo. But yeah, we can manage your environment completely, and you can empower it with the Amazon EC2 instances or EKS, to bifurcate your environment with various projects and with various, node pools, so that your different departments like data scientists and researchers can handle the environment at the same time.
And Rahul, we have a question from the chat from MacTac yet again. MacTac is back. They wanted to ask about are the storage sources maybe configurable today?
Yeah. So, I mean, we do have the shared storage available. Presently, we are using the Lustre file system. You can also use S3 bucket. You'll have to integrate it explicitly to your Run AI or, the NVIDIA empowered environments.
Got it. Very cool.
Yeah. So primarily we'll be using, a predefined environment, which is a Jupyter runbook, in order to run our workloads and trainings. And let's see how it all works together, basically. So when we start a workload, we just start off with the training because we have an interactive workload here. I'll be using internal playground for, my demo, and I can just make it a test environment as the name. Now here comes the predefined cool part. When you have created an environment, you can always create a new environment from here, but most of the time it's preferable to create your environment beforehand, so that you have all your predefined setups ready and things like that. You can run a distributed workload from here. You can run a training or inference job from here, but we'll be using a workspace because we want to train the environment that we are planning to use. So we can use one of the pre-created environments here, which is a Jupyter runbook. Now, when we use this environment, we also see that we have various pre-populated runtime settings, because Jupyter required a command line interface from Jupyter Lab, and it requires a set of arguments which are required for our models to get trained in this particular use case. So depending on your use case, you can customize these arguments and environment. The next step is basically you choosing your compute node. Since this is going to be a small inference job or a training job, we can just take the basic H100 available in our case. and assign the data store here, which was the large PVC that we created in the previous step. You can also create volumes. You can also apply security to this, but in the interest of time, we won't be doing that. Now, the cool part here is the Run AI showcases you all the events associated with your workload when it's being created. So you can like scroll this up and you can look at various logs. Like you can look at the scheduler controlling the job. You can look at the cube config file getting loaded and things like that. So this takes generally like a couple of minutes or maybe 5 minutes. So in the interest of time, we'll just quickly go through some of the logs that are being populated here for an existing environment. And you'll be able to see that, we were able to clone Nemo repository, and we were able to get details around, what the job looks like, what ports are exported, and, what volumes are exported as well.
So I don't have to manage the Jupyter Notebook. I don't have to manage the integration of any of these models for training or inference. It's all just there and managed for you on AWS.
Right. So you can pull in the AWS Notebook using your container URL.
Got it.
Now, when we look at this particular tab, we see that, we have a large set of libraries already included. We have the terminal, we have the, basic TensorFlow and things like that. So you can also club that into your Docker file when you are actually customizing your content. And we also have a predefined Nemo repository, which is cloned here, where you can use, say, a BioNemo model, which is displayed here, and you can just start training it. It's as simple as clicking your play button and, looking at the logs as you move forward with it. So you'll see errors and things associated with it. And at the same time, you can also monitor, what your GPU usage looks like using the NVIDIA SMI command. You can also like embed it with a watch script or something like that, so that you keep looking at a recurring workflow and a recurring usage from the GPU perspective. Now, after all this, we are more than happy to assist you with the partnership with AWS, because this is like a fully AI-driven solution, and you can just take these pre-trained model and start using them on EC2 or, the Blackwell or any other environments, basically empowering your AI journey as you go forward. You can also try out our build.nvidia.com for our underlying infrastructure on AI, and you can use the various models that already reside here and play around with them. And we would be happy to help offline in case you have any questions.
Wow. I love how intuitive, customizable, and really easy it is to just like get whatever it is idea that you have in mind for an AI application up and running in the cloud. So Rahul, Charlie, any resources that you recommend for people that they can use to get started?
Yeah, definitely build.nvidia.com is one of the resources. We also have a lot of open source documentation associated with Run AI. You can look at this particular, API docs associated with Run AI, and you can try out the open source version of things. You can also integrate some of the newer models that are available in open source environment and play around with this documentation.
Yeah. And then just the product page is nvidia.com/DGX-Cloud. And you'll get all the information on DGX Cloud there as well.
Awesome. Well, on behalf of the AWS On Air team, thank you both for joining us. We hope to have you back soon to talk about how DGX Cloud and AWS evolves. Really cool segment. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Bye.
Whew. Wow. Only 35 minutes in it. We covered not one, but two launches. Aren't we lucky, Jillian?
I know. And we've got so many people that are just blown away with like questions. But don't worry, we always have AWS repost. So if there's anything that like we aren't able to catch in the moment, go to AWS repost. It's a fantastic resource for all things AWS.
Absolutely. And in that spirit of that, I mean, jib jab, couldn't have said it better myself. And that feedback, that type of feedback is exactly what we want to hear in our survey. We're going to put a link here in the chat, and it's super simple. You log in with your Builder ID. You tell us if you love the show, if you hate the show. If you thought the show was great, it's all about me. If you thought the show was not so good, talk about Nick. Nick is our producer. I'd love to hear from you. And of course, $20 in AWS credits that you could use towards the bidirectional streaming API for Novasonic.
Love it.
What could be better? Now, this is a little scary, Jillian, as we jump on to our next segment. Typically, this is where we do our news segment with Jeff Barr.
This is like a big responsibility.
Jeff couldn't make it today. So Nick, we got to blame somebody. Thought it was a good idea that we cover the news. So brace yourself, folks. We'd love for you to tell us how we do. We're going to try to recap the news of the week, all things generative AI and beyond on AWS. What's happened and what is happening in the weeks to come. Here we go. Whew, and an intro music. Yikes. Okay, here we go. First announcement that I'm super excited about is all about the Amazon Q Developer new CLI agent launch. I know that's a bit of a tongue twister, but for those who haven't had a chance to take a look at what Q Developer released, the Amazon Q CLI is awesome. With one simple line of installation, you can run a command like Q Chat. So in the same way, for those of you who use Amazon Q Developer for code generation, you ask it a question like, hey, can you debug my code? Or how do I do this? And it generates the code. A lot of developers said, well, that's cool, but what if we can take that one step further and action on the recommendations? So given me as the developer and my consent, I run those instructions. I run those environments on my behalf. That's exactly what this agent feature helps support. So it makes the coding experience more seamless. It integrates not just like general coding knowledge, like, hey, how do I build a React app, but our very own AWS APIs. So instead of it just being, again, answers and responses, now it can take action. And so to learn more about the CLI agent, we're going to attach the launch blog here in the show notes. And we'd love to hear from you. With a coding assistant that can build apps on your behalf, what would you build? Over to you, Jillian.
Wow. And other cool things, multi-language support is now available for Amazon Q Developer. And this feature is coming up in the AWS console. So you'll be able to get started really simply. You can just start like a dialogue with Q Developer in your preferred language. And what's cool is that Q Developer is going to automatically detect the language, and it's going to provide answers and responses and code suggestions in your preferred language. Super cool.
Love it. I think I'm going to stick with English for now, but who knows? We'll see where life takes us. Next up, we've got a super exciting event where not just the event itself, but AWS On Air. We're going on the road, coming with you to AWS London Summit 2025. You might see me there as a host. You might see me there as a guest. You'll have to show up to find out. And what I love about these summits, it's a great way to interact with the local community. And so what can you expect? 190 sessions. That's a lot. Hard to do in one day. We've got a ton of keynote speakers, including our very own Dave Brown, VP of Compute at AWS. And we've got cool things like a startup loft. We have a GenAI pavilion that's powered by NVIDIA, a community lounge, an AWS sports zone to learn more about the work that we're doing with the NFL and F1, and of course the Expo, where our AWS On-Air team often hangs out. So come say hi to us, say hello. You can provide the feedback in person and collect that $20 credit. But we'd love to hear from you in the chat what you're looking forward to most in joining us in London. And particularly if you're based in London and still up hanging out with us, please say hi.
Yes, please do. Love to hear if you're joining us in London. And we've got one more really cool announcement. So Amazon introduces the SWE Polybench, and this is a multi-language benchmark for the evaluation of AI coding assistants. So I'll give you some background. So language models, they are getting really good at many things, but it can be a challenge to evaluate their performance across different programming languages and in real-world situations. So there's industry benchmarks for AI coding agents, and while they provide consistent measurements and help address this problem, usually by measuring task completion performance through resolution rate of a data set to problems, this approach does have some limitations, such as supported programming languages in the data set, or maybe a lack of diverse tasks, or overrepresentation of repositories. So with the SWE Polybench, this is now the first industry benchmark to evaluate AI coding agents' ability to navigate and understand complex code bases. So it comes with rich metrics to advance AI performance in real-world scenarios. Super cool. So I definitely recommend checking that out. In the chat, there is the blog post that talks about it way more in detail, and there's a really cool just like landing page for it. So I'd highly recommend checking it out.
Absolutely. And you can always check out our AWS news blog, our What's New RSS feed. This is a very small subset of all the things that have happened this past week So definitely encourage you to check that out. But I don't know about you, Jillian. I definitely have some questions. There was so much covered with Nova Sonic and DGX Cloud and AWS. And who better than the AWS Repost team to answer some of those questions from this curated knowledge set and an active and vibrant community. So I think we should go. I think we should bring on the Repost Live team.
Let's do it.
Anoop!
Bring the Repost Live team, right? That's what we want. Happy Friday, everyone. My name is Anoop Shivadas. I'm a principal solutions architect here at AWS.
And I'm Jay Bush. I'm a senior technical account manager covering your favorite automotive and manufacturing customers globally. Anoop, can you believe they let us keep doing this? Can you actually believe it?
It's so much fun. And as you see, Repost is full of questions about Nova, DGX Cloud, QCLI agent, what more?
Yeah, there's a lot of updates. I don't want to spoil how much we got to get to. Let's just dive in. I know our time is limited. What do you think?
Yeah, but remember, there is a credit that you can.
Oh, yeah, our credit. I'm bearing the lead.
I think it's right there in the chat. And so
where's the chat?
Yeah, you're over there. $20 is enough for Nova Sonic, which is pretty fun. So yeah, please use that. So we covered a lot of things in the previous segment by our friends with AWS On Air. So within Repost, if you see my screen here, and I have two screens, I'm still looking at
no worries.
Navigating two screens here. So if you look at my screen here, there is a question which we got, and you can see my screen in probably 1, 2.
You have to do a dance. Oh, there you go.
Magic dance. Yeah, exactly. So we got a question from Cloud Guru 561, super active in Repost is what I'm seeing. The question is around any speech generation tips. And the main part of the question is, how should prompts and conversational context be structured for optimal performance in speech native generative model, right? So the context is Nova Sonic in here. And I'm glad that even without mentioning Nova Sonic, our wonderful Repost agent, this is the year of AI agents, right? So we do have a Repost agent here, already jumped in and answered the question for the user, right? So even without mentioning Nova Sonic, the Repost agent was able to answer this. It's a lengthy answer. You can definitely read this offline. I don't want to read the answer here. Let me give my 2 cents, Jay, around what exactly this mean, right? So with the speech native model like Nova Sonic, how do you think about prompts, right? How do you craft prompts? So my perspective and the recommendation in our docs and some of our articles and whatnot is around, ideally think about crafting prompts to sound natural, right? When spoken, and try to avoid text-centric structures like bullet points and tables and code blocks, etc. Right? So, for example, I can give you one very simple prompt, right? So, if you kind of think about or tell the model like, you are a customer support agent, respond concisely using a friendly tone. Keep answers under 2 sentences unless clarification is needed, right? Things like that. That's how you pretty much structure a prompt when it comes to a speech native model like Nova Sonic, if that makes sense, right, Jay? The other aspect is around trying to define roles and give some speech-oriented traits. For example, warm, patient, concise, rather than text-oriented ones like detailed, systematic, things like that, right? So warm, patient, etc. That's how I kind of think about, and that's some of the best practices. And again, if you really need an example, ideally you can say things like, you are a friend, right? Engage in spoken dialogue with short and natural responses, right? Those are some of the things which I will do when it comes to prompts. Also, the most important thing is do not request voice modifications like accents or singing, etc., or sound effects, because Nova Sonic handles those things internally, right? It gives you that thing or handles that thing internally. So don't try to do that, right? So those are some of the recommendations again. Keep short responses, 2-3 sentences. Ideally try to avoid the cognitive load, if you will, right? Things like that. So those are some of the recommendations I've been kind of thinking about as I play with Novasonic. These are some of the things which I'm trying as well. But yeah, super excited about Novasonic. I know you are excited about Q CLI agent. Do you want to talk more?
Yeah, I'm not much of a dev myself, and the Sonic stuff is super cool. I might have to use that for some of my prompting. Chat, let us know if you've used some of these tips and tricks as you've explored with Nova and your use cases out there. But Anoop, I was taking notes. I'll definitely be using that the next time I go at it to get the best results, right? Because these are tools at the end of the day. So I like that. I'm taking a look at Amazon Q Developer and a new agent experience within Q Developer that really, even as a dev or a pretend dev myself, has made it a lot easier for me to interact with Q where I am. So I want to take a look quickly at a few items that I pulled ahead of today. And, I probably buried the lead as we got going, Anoop, but of course, that you and I are on Repost Live, so folks can always check out our tag. If I can, let me figure out where's my screen here? I gotta do the screen dance. There we go. So you can always check out our content on AWS Repost Live, and if you have a Builder ID or an AWS account, you can get signed up. You can follow our tag for our content. As I mentioned, though, I have become fascinated with this Amazon Q Developer CLI agent that we just announced. There was a cool blog that I went through about some of the enhancements of this new experience, right? And it really is just making it easier for me to deploy some of my natural language prompts that I have with Q as I experiment in my IDE of choice. And now I can do a lot more just in natural language. I know we mentioned earlier, beyond just looking up maybe improvements to my code or what have you. Now I can execute mutations and do multi-turn conversations, and it's context aware, right? Which is super cool. That's really the power of generative AI. So I've been super excited about this. I'll drop this blog post in the chat as well for you to read. It's some really cool content around some of the things you can do. And additionally, I started to pull a few questions naturally, of course. Repost guys, we got to check out the questions, see what the community is talking about. So just general questions about Q Developer. I'm just curious. Jason LP was just, asking about Q integrations. And of course, our wonderful community out there is just providing some feedback about different ways you can use Q in your favorite IDE, etc. And with this new announcement, of course, I had to butt in and just let them know, hey, you also can use the new CLI agent and benefit from a bunch of other things. So I wanted to make that quick plug out there for Jason. If you're out there, Jason, I responded to you. Sure. Be sure to check out this new CLI agent. Another one I pulled was from Ben a few days back, who was looking to use Q actually within his terminal in Mac. And this hits home for me because this is how I've used Q in the past, right? And while Vim's not supported today, definitely a lot of folks are starting to chat about this in our true customer obsessed way. I wouldn't be surprised if at some point this pops up, right? So I'll keep my eye on this for you, Ben. But this is another thing. This developer agent, I think, is going to continue to be very popular amongst the development community, Anoop, right? The productivity, the improved accessibility, right? Now you don't necessarily have to be directly in your IDE. You can just be in a terminal. You can execute it wherever. So I'm super excited about this.
Yeah. And I've seen that, a lot of, the code that it generates is super awesome, right? When I see the code is much more, crisper than what I normally try to do with IDE and whatnot, right? And it's faster too. It's very much when it comes to latency, right? It's super fast. The code is crisp and clean. So I love CLI. That's my to-go tool right now.
Yeah, and like I mentioned, I think for me, some of the kind of multi-turn type conversations as they get more complex and you need the context to really be able to get a good response. These are some of the agentic enhancements that I've benefited from. Olawale posted a knowledge article because, of course, Anoop, you and I know that repost isn't just about Q&A.
Absolutely. Yeah.
There's knowledge articles out there too, of course.
Totally.
Quick plug. But Olawale posted a note out here about a common task that many of my container friends have to go through, and some of the benefit that you would have from this new Q experience or this new GenAI world to just improve some of the operational tasks that you might have with Kubernetes, manifests, or otherwise, right? This is really a really common task. And so this is another area where you're seeing a lot of enhancements from the new Q developer CLI agent, or just using Q in general, or a lot of these tools in this space. And so I'm excited that whether you're in the IDE or your terminal of choice, now you can experience the power of GenAI from wherever you are, right? And that's super cool.
That's so awesome, right? Wherever you work, Q, CLI is there.
It'll follow you. It's all Q is omnipresent. It can be everywhere.
Absolutely. I love that, right? I kind of like that flexibility rather than just context switching multiple times over the week. This is pretty awesome, right? Cool.
Yeah. So be sure to check this out. The CLI agent, Amazon Q developer CLI agent. Again, I'll drop the link to this blog and just the announcement I know we dropped in the chat below. But I'm excited for you folks out there to get your hands on it. And of course, if you have a question, where else would you go? And drop a question on repos.
If you have a question, the best platform out there
is
AWS Repost.
Come on.
And again, as Jay mentioned, Repost is not just about asking questions, right? You have knowledge articles. There are community groups. If you're passionate about, let me show off my sticker too.
Come on.
So, there are communities. If you are passionate about generative AI, there is a community right there. Join, you get a lot of goodness around articles and questions. It's pretty amazing out there, right? And the best way and the easiest way for you to sign up is just use your Builder ID or AWS account ID, and you're pretty much in, which is pretty awesome.
Takes like 2 seconds. And you can check out our show. Like I mentioned, follow our tag. We have a lot of good content.
Yeah, absolutely. Follow us and you will be there. Every Tuesday, we are there on Repost Live as well. And we are going to dive deep the entire hour, picking up a use case, a particular service, and then go really deep, right?
I mean, what more do you want?
Including demos. Next week, I'm actually going to show some code for MCP, which is protocol. You don't want to miss that out. And we'll keep publishing a lot of content within Repost to give you more insights and heads up as well. So until next time, Jay, happy building.
Keep building. See you, Anoop.
See y'all.
Conversations.
Well, you never know what happens live, folks. I was about to say I love the jingle, but it seemed like the jingle continued there. Anything can happen here on the show.
Conversations.
But that's how you know we're live, folks. We covered a lot in the past 55 minutes here. Not one, but 2 launches. We started our journey here today to talk about the next, latest, and greatest Amazon Nova model as we talk about Nova Sonic, the easiest way to build conversational AI applications in the cloud. We talked about that bidirectional streaming API and some of the use cases that you can explore. Then we quickly transitioned over to our dear friends at NVIDIA, talking about how to simplify that end-to-end, let's say, turnkey AI platform experience by using DGX Cloud on AWS. We got our folks from Repost Live to tune in and share some of the questions that the community was hearing about. And alas, our journey today has come to an end. Now you might be asking, how do I tune in, particularly some of the episodes that I missed? Well, you can watch the restream on YouTube as part of AWS On Air's channel. You're looking for season 6. You can take a look at Twitch, of course, twitch.tv/AWS. You can take a look at LinkedIn. And if you're looking when we're going to be back, 2 weeks from now, May 9th, you want to hang out with us in London, we hope to see you live in London next week, Wednesday, I believe. And until next time, we can't wait to see what you build. Happy Friday. Thanks for joining us. And we can't wait to see you in 2 weeks. Thanks so much.